animals, which caused many Alarans to sort of like titter and speculate that something funny is going on between these people and these like lifelong animal companions. And so I depicted this Marat woman sort of like gesticulating towards Alara with this like sad primitive bone knife, and she's sort of reaching back to touch her terror bird, Herdbane, in a manner that this fantasy map maker would say, like, I'm not saying there's something going on, but if you want to think there's something going on, go ahead. So, and then for the cherry on top, I titled the map The Realm of Alara and the Barbarian Lands. Then for decoration, I used other thematic elements from within the story, the different sort of elements of Fury crafting, which is the magic system, the seven-pointed star that represents the ruling family, and several others, like a Roman-style eagle. And I was kind of amazed at how well it turned out. It kind of had no right to turn out well, but maybe that's just my imposter syndrome talking. Jim loved it, the publisher loved it, the fans loved it. The ultimate validation actually came a few months later when I was randomly Googling myself, because anyone that claims they don't Google themselves is a liar. And I was actually like Googling Alara map, and I found this blog of this fantasy writer who just sold her first book, and she wanted to include a map with it, and she herself had artistic leanings, and she wanted to do it herself. And so her publisher sent her several examples of fantasy maps to kind of to get her mind working, and they were Lord of the Rings, Chronicles of Narnia, and my map. So. The next year, Jim's agent had an author that needed a map, and so she referred him to me. That was Saladin Ahmed with his Throne of the Crescent Moon trilogy. Then the year after that, Jim's editor had an author who needed a map, and so she connected him with me. That was Mike Cole's Shadow Ops series. By then, I'd kind of established myself well enough that people started coming to me directly. Kevin Hearn had been my friend on Twitter for a long time, and I was a big fan of his work. And so when he needed a map for the 5th book in the Iron Druid series, how is it pronounced again?
Yggdrasil.
Yggdrasil? Okay. In my mind, it was Yggdrasil, because that's how Hugo Weaving pronounces it in the first Thor movie. Or no, it was Captain America. But yeah, so...
I'll go with that. That sounds better.
But, so that... Shauna McGuire, I've also been friends with for a long time on Twitter and in person, and so she naturally reached out to me for the October Day series, and I'm actually working on another map for her now, for her encrypted series. And then Jim Butcher again, the Cinder Spires. So what has sort of started out kind of as a miscommunication has now become this really awesome, fun side career. Across, again, this weird side career, I feel like that first revelation about the necessity of having a point of view with maps has really steered everything that I do. My favorite aspect of maps is their storytelling potential. And I feel like giving the maps a point of view is essential as for a writer choosing a narrator. A map is one of the first things that a reader sees when they open the book. I mean, it's the cover art. Maybe you'll read the blurb text on the back, and then you open and you see the map. We're talking first impressions, and that's a heady responsibility. That is not the page that I'm looking for. Even though they cover the same area of land, the tone that you want to set, if you're creating a map for The Wizard of Oz versus Wicked, is going to have a very different tonality. There are going to be very different political ideas that are represented in those two maps, very different values. With regard to point of view, sometimes maps are made to look like they were done by the actual characters in the story, like the map of Hundred Acre Wood in the Winnie the Pooh books. Looks like it was designed by Christopher Robin with a little bit of help from the book illustrator. And so the priorities in that map are going to be where his friends live, where they had certain adventures. And hopefully when you're looking at the map, you're these little kid readers are gonna be like, I want to know what a heffalump is. Like, I want to read that story. So we want to welcome. We want to welcome readers into this world. We choose like what information do we want to convey to the reader. Why does the map exist beyond helping the reader sort of go from point A to point B? What are the values of the people in your world, or at least, Tony, hi! My best friend from high school, I didn't know. Oh my gosh, that's awesome, okay. And like with respect to these like different viewpoints that people bring to map making, fan-made maps, some of which you're going to see upstairs, often have really interesting lenses on these worlds that are kind of somewhat different from the map that you would want to like represent your book going in. There are these two great maps for A Song of Ice and Fire, where like one is the kind of a list of like the history of Westeros and Essos done over like 12 maps, like what land was covered by which ruling family, and it's just a beautiful way of expressing like how power has changed hands over that time. There's another that's so amazingly nerdy, it just like it makes my heart sing. A bunch of geophysicists actually like got together and looked at like, okay, like how old is the rock in this part of George R. R. Martin's world? Like what type of like geothermal activity led to the formation of these areas? So if you want to know, oh, did I cut that joke? No. The joke was going to be, so if you want to know like what the, how old the, do I remember the answer to it? Yes, I do. If you want to know how old the rock is in King's Landing, look that up, and the answer is less than 2.6 million years. Oh, and it's sedimentary rock. Composition and age. That was the joke. Yes! Why is it not in here? Because I haven't been referring to it, so it spirited off. Every map that you encounter is going to have a series of priorities, even in the most neutral seeming situation. And to prove this conjecture, which is not conjecture, it is like a full theory going on, look at Google Maps, which is like a real-life existing map, of course, but it looks like it has no point of view at all. But there are like human decisions that went into shaping like why certain things are represented, like why it includes this restaurant, which it doesn't include other restaurants. Like from something that small to actually like really large world-spanning situations. In some sense, it tries to take a politically neutral stance on like the powers of the world, but that's also not always consistent. In some situations, it takes cues from the user's location. Like users in Russia see a solid boundary line around Russia and Crimea, indicating like it's the same place. That outside of Russia, Crimea is surrounded by dashed lines, indicating it is occupied territory. So clearly, like the Google CEOs didn't want to get on the bad side of Vladimir Putin, at least where he can see them. But in other situations, it mirrors U.S. policy. Like Palestine is not named on Google Maps in any country, even in the UN signatories that consider it a sovereign nation. So Google seems to be taking its cue from the US government in that case, which doesn't. Google Maps also utilizes a variant. I am losing people talking about Google Maps. It uses a very sort of controversial projection system, like getting a 3D globe to a 2D plane, called the Mercator projection. It's used very widely because it preserves the angles and kind of the rough shapes of things, and which makes it a really convenient navigation tool because there's not a lot of like warping going on. And it's also less computationally intensive than any other projections, but it's also been very widely criticized for the way that it distorts the relative size of things. It disproportionately enlarges regions near the poles and dwarfs things near the equator. So as a result, Africa looks to be the same size as Greenland, when in reality it's 12 times bigger. but because certain like equal area projections tend to not zoom well or pan well. Shapes would appear to warp as you zoomed in and out, which would be really unattractive and kind of confusing to a lot of people in a map software. So the Mercator became the method that best served Google's needs, even though it's not perfect. And these are all very deliberate decisions. They show us what Google values, what Google believes its user base values. Neutral is still that's the wrong thing. Neutral is still a position. And that, like, the knowledge that even in the most, like, simple, bare bones map, you're still going to have a perspective, you're still going to have a point of view, you're still going to have values, that is like life-changing to artists. Like it presents the most incredible opportunity. We have the power to show readers what these imaginary worlds value and dictate that point of view. One of my favorite maps is actually upstairs, and I did a little dance when I saw it. It's Keith Thompson's caricature map from the book Leviathan. It sets up this fantastic conflict between these two warring powers in this alternate version of World War I, the Darwinists and the Clankers. And the Darwinists sort of, I don't need to get into detail about that. And so it literalizes this conflict by making these warring countries like be actually like physically attacking each other, which makes this map of Europe look like this, just like rather than being static images of countries and you sort of say like, oh yeah, like they're at war, but you can't, it doesn't feel as visceral as